the senseless shootings that have been happening here in Salisbury lately. Now, tonight's forum is less than a mile away from where a man in his 20s was shot in the back late last night. These renters, homeowners, and realtors holding signs outside of City Hall and chanting are making it perfectly clear to the board that they're not going to support any new restrictions on what homeowners can and can't do on their properties.
Paul, Steve, Congressman John Carney and other state officials are largely opposed to any offshore drilling in Delaware. Now that's mainly because of the potential environmental impacts and effects on coastal tourism.
Things have been pretty quiet here in Dover tonight. There haven't been any signs of protest or unrest. The city of Dover says it's taking the necessary steps to ensure that people's right to assemble is respected. However, the city says it will not tolerate any type of violence that may come following the release of this dash cam video that you're going to see in a minute. But please be advised, the content is graphic and may not be suitable for young audiences. Earlier this week, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs announced they will no longer support an Eastern Shore Veterans Center that helps homeless veterans find transitional and permanent housing. Wrapping up here at St. Anthony's, the second public viewing ended at 9 o'clock. Vice President Biden and the family are still inside greeting the mourners. And if you take a look behind me, you can maybe see that there are still some mourners inside there paying their respects. You know, over the course of these 3 days of memorial ceremonies for Beau Biden, there just aren't enough words to describe how the community, how the state of Delaware has come out to support and grieve with the Biden family. The long-standing debate over offshore drilling off the Atlantic coast is resurfacing this week at a meeting hosted by the Assateague Coastal Trust. They plan to make the case against federal initiatives to begin testing off the Atlantic coast, despite the benefits proponents say offshore drilling offers and the impacts it could have for people not just on the East Coast, but across the United States as well.
Good evening, Delmarva. We're flying over Prime Hook, where dredging is happening right now to restore part of the refuge to its former saltwater state. Now let's get you a check a little closer to the action. You can see all that murky material coming out of that big machine. It's clawing its way through the silt and sand to restore those devastated water channels.
Now, thunderstorms are expected to hit parts of Delmarva this weekend, but as many local fans are saying, a little bit of mud on their cowboy boots isn't too big of a deal. Live from Kent County, Nicole Edenedo, WBOC News, Dover. Back to you. The streets are quiet now, but for how much longer is on the minds of many, given the recent string of shootings in the city. Here on the 100 block of Delaware Avenue, city police say 24-year-old Sean Woodford was shot in the back late last night. 13-year-old Roger Warner says he heard the shots.
When I pulled up, I just saw the cops over there, and I walked to the corner and just saw people watching, then I just saw the body just laying there.
It's the third shooting in Salisbury in 11 days. Woodford may have been lucky to survive, but for 17-year-old Rakim Russell, murdered on August 2nd, and 21-year-old Delmare DeShields, murdered on August 3rd, they both died in those shootings.
It's crazy.
Jerome Dormand has seen a lot in his 25 years in Salisbury.
That our own kind would want to kill each other off like that, you know, and that's what people look for us to do that.
Tonight, Maryland's Attorney General will join the mayor to share ideas on how to stop the violence and bring peace to Salisbury. Now, it's important to note that the public is invited to come to tonight's community forum. I spoke to a few residents in Salisbury about some of their suggestions about what they think could help to curb some of the violence here. Some of their suggestions include adding more activities, more rec centers where teens can go to stay out of trouble, and that could help curb the violence. Now, community leaders and city leaders will be here at the forum tonight bringing more ideas to the table about how to stop some of this, and we'll be here throughout the night, and we'll have another update for you on WBOC News at 10 and 11. Reporting live from Wycomico County, Nicole Edenedo, WBOC News, Salisbury. A heated war of words exchanged between veterans facing homelessness and the VA department tasked with looking out for them.
I can't talk about your personal issues.
I'm telling you you can.
No, I can't.
I'm telling you you can.
Well, it doesn't work that way.
These veterans are upset because in 2 months, they'll be homeless once again. Leaders from the Veteran Support Center of America in Quantico met with officials from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs in Cambridge Saturday, demanding answers as to why the VA won't extend a contract that funds a veterans housing and support program.
I'm getting somewhere where I'm at, and now you're going to yank it out from underneath me, and I'm going to have to start all over again in some other place you put me.
The center's co-founder, Jerry Black, says they've called on Congressman Andy Harris to use his seat on the House Appropriations Committee to try getting the contract extended. The committee, one of the most powerful on the Hill, is responsible for how and how much money should be spent by the government. A VA spokesperson explained why a contract extension can't be awarded to the Veterans Center.
And the way contracting works is that we have to, put that bid out for competitive, contracting. So we can't just renegotiate in the middle of the term.
So the VA will let the contract expire and open the bid process. But between the September 29th expiration date and whenever a new contract is finalized, that could take 6 months to a year or more. Time that Eastern Shore veterans will likely spend homeless, even though the VA says they'll make sure all affected vets have homes.
And if we haven't found permanent housing, we will continue to provide them transitional services. No one's going to be kicked out onto the street. We would never allow that to happen.
But some veterans don't see the VA's logic.
Why would you have to transition them when they're already in a home? All you have to do is extend the contract. Exactly. I mean, that's pretty much common sense right there.
The meeting continued, but as veterans fired off more tough questions, the heat in the kitchen was too hot for the VA to handle. The center's co-founder, Jerry Black, says political help isn't the only avenue they're exploring to save the center. They're also raising money on a GoFundMe page to continue to keep veterans off the street and on their feet in Wicomico County. And if you would like to make a donation, you can visit WBOC.com for more information about how to help. Time is almost up for Prime Hook officials to finish restoration at the refuge. Their deadline is the end of October.
This is part of a really large sandy resiliency project to restore Prime Hook National Wildlife Refuge back to a more historic state of salt marsh and freshwater marshes rather than the impoundments that it was for about 25 years.
The focus is on 3 sections of Prime Hook. Unit 1 always held saltwater. Unit 2, for 25 years, held freshwater maintained by the facility. And Unit 3, largest of them all, has typically been a hybrid area. Because storms like Hurricane Sandy devastated the shoreline in Unit 2, much of the wildlife, vegetation, and food source for waterfowl were compromised due to all the salt water.
Unit 2, just north of here, after the restoration, is going to look much like any salt marsh that you would normally see. Unit 3 is going to be more brackish.
But restoration doesn't come without controversy. Some want to see Unit 2 go back to being freshwater so waterfowl can continue feeding from it. But officials say freshwater isn't the best environment to grow sturdy vegetation that can prevent breaches.
In its heyday, it was one of the finest examples of moist soil management unit along the Eastern Flyway. And so a lot of people would like to see it return to that, but it requires man's intervention and it's not sustainable.
Rizzo and Wilson say Prime Hook's first priority is protecting the ecosystem to make sure it withstands Mother Nature's fury.
Now, today's dredging is actually phase 2 of the restoration project at Prime Hook. The main project is to replenish the beaches that were breached during Sandy, and that's likely to take place sometime next week. Reporting from Shopper 16, I'm Nicole Edenedo for WBOC News in Milton.
Delawareans will remember this day for years to come. The day Vice President Joe Biden buried his son, Joseph Robinette Beau Biden. Mourners standing by in support at St. Anthony's each have individual stories about what Beau meant to them. For Laura McKelkin, her connection is to Beau's widow, Haley.
I'm here because I'm a widow too, and I just really feel for her. My husband passed away 5 years ago, and I can just tell, I remember that look on my face, that look that she has on her face, and my children were young too.
Many Delawarean mourners see themselves in Joe and in Beau as people who do right by one another, as neighbors who look out for each other, as family who love one another.
I will speak on the behalf of all Delawareans. the Bidens, as a family, have given back or given to the state so much that it's only right that we come out and use this tragic event, so to speak, as a way of showing them how much we appreciate them and how grateful we are for them.
The Bidens are Delaware, and Jill and Joe have been friends of mine from way back when the kids were little, and I'm just very, very sad.
As are those in Delaware, as are we all.